Welcome back, colleagues. This is Learn Extra Teacher Talk, and we're focusing on mathematical literacy. Now, we're coming to the end of our first term of Teacher Talk, and I hope you've enjoyed engaging with us. But we're doing something that's really important. We're looking at reflection and evaluation on what's happened in Term 1, and we're looking ahead to planning steps for Term 2. Now, one of the things that we're going to need to look at, and let's just go there straight away, is having done some reflection. And maybe this is the first time you're doing some reflection. Out of doing that reflection, I think you need to really be clear about setting new goals. Set new goals. And be specific, as we mentioned, the importance of goals. You can make all sorts of plans, but reflect on those, make yourself accountable, put them somewhere where you see your goals, almost on a weekly or daily basis, and start to move through Term 2 with those in mind. And the second idea that I think that's important that we need to focus on is not only just having goals, but to look at what are some of the teaching strategies that we're going to employ for the second term. Now, remember that Term 2 is a really busy term. And so we do need to plan for it, and we need to not only have our own personal goals, but we need to challenge the learners to set goals as well. So they've done some work in Term 1, and they might have, because they're new to mathematical literacy, might have been growing in confidence. We want to make sure that they've set their goals, and we can reflect on those. What about our teaching strategies for Term 2? We need to take a look at those. We're going to say a little bit more about each of these in a little while. And then we need to take a look at planning the use of resources. So those are three aspects of planning for Term 2 that I think are really important. And I want to just get down to some nitty-gritties in terms of the plans that we have so that we can implement these. Now, remember that in all schools, there are bigger plans. But we need to fit into those plans and make sure that we don't contradict those plans. So what about mathematical literacy and the teaching of mathematical literacy in the second term? Well, there are a whole range of topics, but the big thing for Term 2 that we need to be aware of is there is a focus at the end of the term on assessment. So let's get that plan and the teaching strategies around assessment sorted out. One of the first things as a department, or if you're on your own and you're the only teacher teaching mathematical literacy, that I believe is crucial, is that you need to have your assessment strategies clearly in place up front, so that you know, according to the school plan, when the control tests are going to be, and encourage other departments. If there isn't a coordinated plan, there should be a coordinated plan, but encourage the different departments to set the tests in a controlled way, so that the learners don't have 10 tests on the same day. They're not overloaded with assignments that all have to be handed in the same week. So there needs to be some negotiation in setting up your assessment plan. Now remember that there are different forms of assessment. There's the control test, there's the investigation, and there's also the assignment. So make sure that you've got those battled down. If you're needing some help, go to the CAPS document, because for each section there are some ideas that you could include in assignments for different levels. The other important idea here is your school will have an assessment policy related to the mid-year exams. Some of those exam papers are set in a cluster. Some of them are set by the school. Some of them are set by that are shared. And so make sure that you know what those plans are and that you can contribute, because you need to be part of the process, not only providing information to the learners in terms of what's going to be included in those final exams or those mid-year exams, but you need to be aware of the levels, and you need to make sure that they are set in time so they can be moderated. The process of setting exams and tests, the control tests, needs to be something that is practiced, and it needs to be shared. Don't just make sure that that one person always sets the tests, It can be a partnership. Finding new materials for those assessments is also not always easy, but look at different places to find resources: newspapers, magazines, the internet, household bills. Remember to be real and practical in your assessment. Then in terms of moderation, make sure that somebody reads through the exam papers that have been set and they look for levels, making sure that there are not too many level 1 questions or there are not too many level 4 questions. They need to be balanced. So reflection on who's going to set, who's going to moderate, making sure that they are accurate. If you can do this early, then it's even better, because then you can put the exam paper or the questions aside, even if they're assignments or investigations. You can put them aside and read them before they go to the final print. There's nothing worse than going to a test that is printed the day before and then finding that there is an error that might just have been a typo error that could have been corrected. But what happens if we get very close with material that we're working with it? I find this all the time because I work with developing material. You get close to the material and you don't see the errors. It takes some distance and takes some time to work through those problems. So if you put it aside for a little while, go back and look at it, even if it's 4 days later, a week later, you will pick up many of the errors. Now, teaching strategies in terms of your goals, getting things organized is important, and we've spoken about getting the big blocks in place. Assessment is a big block that we need to fill term 2. So let's make sure that we've got our assessment all buttoned down. We know exactly when the papers are coming in. We know who's going to do what grades are going to do it when, and it all fits together, and you can report back to your deputies and your principal that you've got your department organized. Now, what are some of the other things? And here's the challenge. Mathematical literacy lends itself to a whole lot of teaching strategies. Some of these we've discussed, and we've discussed them in informal interviews. We've mentioned that there are different ways of making learners accountable for their learning. And so I want to challenge you to not just do the same thing. And it's part of the goal setting, is to say, how about introducing 1 or 2 different approaches? Now, that might mean that you, instead of always meeting in the classroom, you recognize that you can put learners in a context, in the school environment, to solve a particular problem, where you might give them an investigation. That might be something that you've never tried before. Well, how about scheduling it into your plan for term 2, so that you are determined to get it done, that you've got the planning done ahead of time, and you know exactly what's going to happen. It's important to be detailed when you do make a change. Perhaps you would like to use a video, or if your school has a computer room, to book the computer room for learners to engage with some of the material that is online. And so I would recommend that you go and have a look at what the Mindset website has to offer, and you'll find that in mathematical literacy there are videos that you can download, that you can use in a variety of ways. There are also learning programs that you can use on your computers. So perhaps 1 or 2 of those might be useful. As you reflect on the way that you've been setting up groups in your classroom, maybe there are some new ways of handling those groups. Perhaps you need to reevaluate how you've assigned members of different groups to each other. Try different things. We've mentioned some of these techniques in previous lessons, and when we interviewed Peter, he had some great ideas as well in terms of practical things that you can do to make sure that learners are engaged and that you've got your planning done up front. If you don't plan this, if you don't think ahead to what term 2 is going to be, it will be over before you know it, and you won't have done anything. But if you take time now to look at planning for new strategies, you'll be surprised that you can implement them. It just takes a little bit of effort and planning. Where are you going to get those ideas? Well, that's part of the planning and the resources. One of the great resources that you can use is obviously there are local resources. So go and have a look in the public library. Go and have a look in the school library. You'll be surprised. You might find that there's a whole lot of stuff that you can use there. Newspapers. And obviously, different websites are interesting for the use of resources. Now, there's one other aspect or another aspect that comes to mind that I think that is really important in terms of this whole goal setting and this growth session that we've been talking about, personal growth. You'll find that there are lots of resources available at conferences. And I know that we're going to be talking more about conferences as we get into the second term, but here's an idea for you. As we look at conferences, you'll be aware of AMISA. And why don't you make a plan to make sure that you can attend the National AMISA conference? There are also regional AMISA conferences. Not only attend, but how about presenting a paper? If you set this up, you will benefit, because the more you share and you give away to other people, you will find that they will return and give back to you. There are numerous ideas that you'll find floating around at conferences, and there are lots of great conferences coming up in the near future. There's one that's happening in Durban in the next little while on education. It's an education summit, and if you could get there, that would be great. I know that there's some colleagues of mine that are going, and they're going to give us feedback that I hope to be able to share with you from those conferences. If you're arranging a regional conference, get in touch with us. We'd love to share those ideas with you as well. So there are some big picture planning strategies for Term 2. Now, I've mentioned some of these in terms of assessment, but I want to just take it a step further, because we've spoken just really quite generally about Term 2 in terms of ways that you can plan for it. Remember, the CAPS document is a very useful document in helping guide you with grade 10 learners specifically, and then there are provincial pace setters that you can use as well in planning your strategies for grade 11 and 12. I would suggest that you get hold of those and make sure that you follow those. Now, we spoke about assessment last time, and remember that there are those different types of assessment. Now, the thing that I wanted to mention here is that although we have these different types of assessment, in Term 2, I think that it's really useful as we plan for them is to include learners. Not necessarily in terms of what's going to be in the assessment, but we need to include learners in the following way. There are two ways. We need to, I believe, often negotiate deadlines. Yes, we might have said if you do that up front, you'll find that they negotiate a deadline, you commit to it, and then you must stick to it. A negotiated deadline can't be moved. So do that up front. Even if you negotiate that with your learners now, you can say, put it in your diary, this is the date, and you'll find, oh no, we've got a maths test, or we've got not a maths test, but we've got a life sciences test, or we've got a big assignment for geography. One of the other subjects has already got that. It's important to get learners involved in the process of planning. The other aspect of that work, make sure your learners are very clear about the requirements. They need to be extremely clear about what you're wanting, when you're wanting it, and the format that you're wanting it in. This comes back to giving them clear guidelines and clear instructions for their particular tasks that they're doing. We spoke about last time about informal and formal assessment. Requirements are very important. Learners need to know what's happening. Remember, for grade 10 learners, many of them will not have written a mid-year exam previously. They've written grade 8 and 9 exams, and those are more like tests, but this is their first formal test, their first formal examination. And so make clear to them what the requirements are and give them opportunities to practice. I believe it's also important that as we talk about assessment with our learners, I just want to take number 3 out there, that we give them guidelines. Give them guidelines and help. Suggested study techniques. Study techniques. Exam techniques. How to answer an exam. And that comes back to how to answer. That comes back to giving them opportunity to practice. They can do this in the class. You can give them an exam type question after you've done some work. Take an old question from a previous test that you're not going to use again and say, right guys, one of the things that you're going to have to do in the exam is to manage your time. So manage time is the goal. And you can then say to them, right, this question is for 15 marks, and I want you to aim to do it in 10 minutes. And obviously you use the requirements of the exam, get learners to work at that pace. So under exam conditions, they have had the opportunity to practice. Now, this is an important part of the plan. As we go into term 2, where are you going to assist learners to improve their ability to answer those exam type questions? It's really important that we support our learners, and particularly starting with grade 10, they need to make sure that they are moving from grade 10 level and then getting used to exam type questions in grade 11, so that when they get to the final end of year exam in grade 12, exams are a breeze. We don't necessarily recognize that exams are the best way to assess, but they're the fairest at the moment. So we've got to train our learners not only in the ability to use their mathematical skills and to discover knowledge and to do a whole lot of interesting stuff in class, but we actually do need to prepare them for the exams. And so I believe that's an important part of our planning for term 2. Look critically at your assessment. And then the third point that I wanted to get to here is make sure that you let your learners know they need to be informed. Inform learners and their parents, if necessary, if you can, if it's not the school policy, early. And when I say inform them early, when you've got a date, set the date, put it up on a notice board, make it very clear to learners that's an immovable date, so they can't come 2 weeks before and say, no, we want to move the assignment. The date is set and it's very clear. Even if you get the learners to, the parents to know that as well, you will get buy-in to make sure that that happens. The other thing is what content is going to be, what is going to be examined, what sections are going to be in each of the control tests and the exam. What sections are examined? Examinable. So if you are open with your learners, you will find that if you give them this information early, it's motivation for them to start their planning of learning early. And they won't be confused. Oh, is this in or that in? When they get to the exam, they'll be confident and they'll be willing and able to, having put in the work, to perform and to do the best that they can. Now, there is one last thing that I want to just go to, which I didn't get a chance to. As we look at planning for term 2, I want to point you to the Mindset website, because we've done a little bit of a revamp on the Mindset website and we'll continue to revamp. If you're planning for term 2, the one thing that I want to point you to is this section here. Every week we speak about what's happening in terms of what's coming up, grade 10, 11 and 12, what's up on the weekend, but a detailed schedule for what's coming up during the holidays is also available on this website. So you can download a printed format of all the Learn Extra topics and the holiday programs, both in the Easter program, where we're going to be doing a rerun and a repeat of all the term 1 stuff, and then moving in to cover other subjects like geography and accounting as well. That's coming up. And then we also got details about what's coming up in the July holidays. So there are some special events taking place. July holidays, there's winter school for grade 10, 11 and 12. Focus mainly being on grade 12 learners, but there will be some information for grade 10s as well, grade 11s as well, and some stuff for grade 10s. Now, the other aspect that we want to include you in our plans, we've been doing some planning, and we've got a range of activities and ideas, and we're asking for your assistance. Plans for you to be involved, and one of the things that we're looking for is to include people as Learn Extra Live presenters or Learn Extra presenters. We'd love to hear from you. Go to this website, go to this page, click on the links. You'll be able to fill in a form, send it back to us, and we'll be in touch with you for details about when we're holding auditions and how we can work together to make Learn Extra in South Africa even more successful than it is. So please don't forget to include us in your plans. We will continue to share our plans with you. Remember, the other aspect that you can go to, or the other place that you can go to, and I just want to go there right now, is you can go to our new look Learn Extra Teacher Talk page. Have a look at that page. Post your comments on there. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to share ideas on that page. Last thing that I want to show you today is we've put some of our videos from Learn Extra Mathematical Literacy onto YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and I've just done a little search on this. The main website to get here, I'll just have a quick write of it, is www.youtube.com. And then you just have to go / and I'm going to have to put it underneath, Mind Set Learn, all one word. So if you do that, then in this button you search for mathematical literacy or maths literacy, you will find that there are a whole lot of videos that are available here. So these are some resources. If you go to this website, you go to this page, these are resources that you can plan to use. Now, I just want to point out the difference between them. You will notice over here, when it's this background here, these are the live shows. When you've got this background, then those are the ones that are broadcast on Saturdays, and there are even some from last year when we did matric revision from last year. So have a look at these resources, see if you can plan to include them, and again, we'd love to hear from you. Now, we're almost out of time. I really want to say thank you for tuning in, and it's been my pleasure to chat to you on Learn Extra Teacher Talk. I wish you well for the holidays. Hope you get a good rest, and we'll see you again in the second term. Remember to join us Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Bye for now.